Hello, Bree. Hi, welcome onto my podcast.
Thank you, Luke. It's lovely to be here.
So we just recorded an episode of your podcast.
We did.
Which is called Into the Story.
Mm-hmm.
What's the whole idea with your show?
Well, on my show, we help people learn English, improve their English by listening to true stories told by very, very interesting people from all over the world, such as yourself. Yeah, you're an interesting person.
I'm a very, very interesting person, apparently. Yeah. You asked me to tell a true story, and we just did that. So how would you summarize the story that I told? I don't expect you to give all the events and details, but what was the story that I told you? I mean, I know the story. I mean, I'm asking you to explain it. I know it because it happened to me and I just told it. But anyway, could you do it?
Yeah, I can. Well, you're a father of two now.
Yeah.
And you tell a very charming story where you are like Liam Neeson. And you fight through the rough streets of Paris to save something for your daughter. And I think that your listeners are going to have to listen to the story to see how it ends. If you, in fact, are a hero, you are Liam Neeson, or you just completely disappoint and let down your whole family.
Your listeners, you'll have to check out the episode to find out all about that. So, Bree, we're going to talk about children and helping your children with their English and the importance of starting early. And we'll kind of talk about that in quite a lot of detail about what parents can do to really give their kids a head start in their English, or to kind of like really make the most of that really important period in childhood in order to help them improve their English, from the very beginning. We're going to talk about that. But before we do that, let me just ask you to perhaps tell my audience a little bit about yourself. So who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? What's your background?
Just everything.
Yeah. Not literally your background now behind you, because I can see you're standing in front of a painting of some mountains, but I mean your background in the sense of your the things you've done in your life. Little joke there for everyone. You're welcome.
Okay, so my name is Bree, and I am from Canada. I'm actually, this is what I grew up looking at, these mountains, the Rocky Mountains.
By the way, most people who are listening to this are listening to the audio version. They're in audio land, so they can't actually see the painting on the wall behind you. Yeah. So
behind me is a misty mountain scene of some mountains called the Three Sisters Mountains, which is near Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Banff. Anyways, very beautiful, very, very beautiful part of the world. And so I am Canadian. I have a Canadian accent, which is the exact same as an American accent, essentially. Most people, unless you're from Texas or New York, a Canadian accent is the same as a California accent.
How do you say, just one quick thing, I'm going to write something write something for you. Okay. I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I'm genuinely curious. How do you say that?
I knew you were going to say that. Out and about.
Right, so I would say out and about, but you say it again for us?
Out and about.
Right, it's almost exactly the same. Why did I ask you to say out and about? Because some people in mostly Eastern Canada would say out and about or something like that. Yeah. Not so much in the western parts of Canada, though. No. Yeah, the western part, I would say more like Western America, the Western USA and Western Canada. It's all a very similar accent. Of course, you can hear little things, but pretty much the same. Okay. And yeah, so I have been living in Barcelona, Spain for 13 years now. And when I arrived here, like so many English speakers, I started teaching English. My background is actually in psychology, but when I came here, I started teaching English. There's quite a lot of similarities, actually. I don't know if you found this, Luke, between doing English classes and feeling like you're doing a therapy session sometimes. Sure, of course. Yeah, a lot of psychology. Yeah, a lot of psychology, knowing about people, knowing how to manage people's
emotions or stress or goals, all sorts of things. So me and my then boyfriend, now husband, we started a language school in 2012. Then we started an online school in 2020 where we teach mainly Cambridge exams and private classes. And we have a podcast. And that's kind of our passion. My passion specifically is stories. I love stories. So we get to interview people where they tell true stories, and then we edit them up all nice and put music, and we like to think about it like, I don't know, it kind of feels like a movie for your ears, something like that, where you get to learn things about life, get to learn things about different people, and you get to improve your English. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, and it's called Into the Story.
Into the Story.
You'll find links in the description, guys. Okay, so what about kids then? So that's the title of this episode. It's going to be, the title of this episode is going to be something like The Superpower of Starting English Early with Kids. So tell us about that then.
Right. So I am a mom. I have 2 kids, 2 little boys, 2 and 4. So any other people out there who have this age of children, it's hardcore. It's real. It's real. It's real.
Yeah, it is.
So like I said, I studied psychology, specifically infant development. I also worked with people with autism. And when you work in this sector of psychology, a lot of it is linguistics, language acquisition, how people communicate. And when my boys were born, I just became very interested in reading everything I could about bilingualism and specifically early language acquisition. So once that became an interest for me, I started just doing workshops because I already was in the sector of teaching language, and all of the parents would approach me and say, what can I do? So I started running a workshop, and we're going to go over some of the main points of that workshop today about what can, non-native speakers or people who speak English as a second or third language, how can they use that to their child's benefit? And really, when is the ideal time to start, or when is a good time to start exposing your kid to English? Yeah.
One of your things is to start early. Tell us about the reasons why it's important to start early. I mean, how early are we talking about?
Basically, as early as possible. I mean, newborns start listening to language before they're even newborns. They start listening to their mother and anyone around them speak by the 3rd trimester. So they're actually already starting to listen to the patterns of the languages being spoken around them. So early could be considered already in the 3rd trimester. But when I say early, I basically from birth. So from birth until 3 years old is considered there's a researcher called Patricia Cole, and she specifically looks at language acquisition in young children. And she describes 0 to 3 as like the golden age. It's just, when you look at the graph, you just see the language capacity from 0 to 3 is just like top. Like, these little people are just taking everything in. They're making millions of neural connections every second, which is like so much more than we do as adults. And this capacity basically continues until they're 3, then it drops off until 7, and then it slowly goes down. I'm not talking about that they don't have the ability. It's just their capacity to just capture language just goes down from 7 until around puberty. And then that's when we notice that there's huge changes in the plasticity of the brain. So the brain's ability to make new connections, learn new things extremely easily, which is what is required for learning a language. And so the earlier you can start, the easier it will be for them to pick it up without formal language instruction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, of course. Yeah, I mean, in layman's terms, you could say that a child's brain is like a sponge, and it just absorbs the things, that it's exposed to. Several things come into my mind. One of them is the question of So what people might think when they hear that, which is that, oh, so when you get to like puberty, after that it's hopeless, is it? You know, in terms of language learning, you don't want to give that impression, do you?
No, not at all. But so imagine a world where a child was not exposed to any English or any other language other than their native language until, say, puberty. The way they would have to pick up, the way they would have to start learning that language would not simply be by exposing them to the language a little bit and they would just naturally pick it up. It would probably have to follow some formal language instruction. So teaching a little bit of grammar, prompting them to use certain phrases in certain contexts, where young children, that formal language instruction is just not necessary. However, you do need to prompt them to use the language, but that's another thing we can get into later. Yeah.
So the little kids, it's just a natural thing they don't even think about. It just happens as they are exposed to it, or as they use it, or as they develop relationships with people in that language. And as kids get older, and when people get to puberty and beyond puberty, I mean, sort of happens in the teenage years, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we need to explain what puberty is. Adolescence. It's, the process of the physical changes that occur when kids turn into adults. This horrible experience. Oh, God.
It's hard. Yeah. We call it middle school. Grade 7. So like 12, 13, I'm pretty sure is like the worst year for every person. Like,
we all remember the experience of going through puberty. It's horrible. Suddenly you get spots all over your body and other things happening. Like, God, what is this metamorphosis? What is this monster I'm becoming?
But I mean, we probably also remember that our brains change at that time. We start thinking about the world in a different way. And that change that we experience from the inside, also there's a change that happens that changes our linguistic ability at that time as well.
And so, I guess the point you're making is that after that age, language learning has to be contrived in certain ways. It doesn't just happen in the same way that it does with little kids. So, I mean, there's a whole other argument, a whole other debate and conversation we could be having about, do adults